Hi, my name is Matt Kowarski. Thank you so much for joining me today. I work at the Novel Tree Medical, and I'm one of their Department of Health certified medical cannabis consultants. Today I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about Cannabis 101, a little bit about the science behind what we do here, and a little bit more specifically about how and why cannabis can and might be beneficial for someone who has Parkinson's. So a little bit about the Novel Tree Medical. 3 years ago, we started as an offshoot of the Novel Tree Recreational, which opened about 5 years ago. The video that we're showing you, I just want to show you to give you a little bit of an idea of what our store looks like. Unfortunately, there were some audio issues between our video and Zoom. So if you go to thenoveltreemedical.com or find us on YouTube, you can absolutely watch this video, and it is testimonials of some of the people that we've been helping over the last few years. We are in Washington, the only standalone medical facility for cannabis. We are the only store that has a devoted, separated medical space that is only staffed by Department of Health certified medical cannabis consultants. So we are really one of the only best main resources if you have any questions, and really to kind of help you start and guide. We can really kind of help you start to guide you through your cannabis journey, as we have with the people here in the video. One of the major benefits about having a dedicated medical space is it allows us to really focus on the medical benefits and aspects of the cannabis plant. My job is primarily research. Over the last 3 years, I've been lucky enough to be a guest for about half a dozen different Parkinson support groups. So I, all around the Seattle and East Side areas. So I've really been able to meet a lot of people who are using cannabis with Parkinson's, and we've gotten a lot of feedback as to the things that might be beneficial, the things that don't seem to be as beneficial, things to avoid and be aware of and look out for, and things to kind of more specifically begin with. I do just want to take the opportunity at the beginning of our conversation that if anyone has any comments, questions, concerns, criticisms, whatever it might be, please, you feel free to reach out to us at medical@novel-tree.com, or give us a call at 425-896-8414. We will have links that can easily direct you to all that information at any time. But now I'm going to kind of get started on the history, the science, and why cannabis might be something that is going to be effective in helping to deal with some of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Cannabis has been used medicinally for at least the last 6,000 years, when it was written in an early Chinese pharmacopoeia. Hemp rope has been discovered in burial mounds dating back 30,000 years. So this is a plant that has been with us, for a very, very long time. We like to think that we're not discovering anything new. We're rediscovering ancient methods and techniques, and we're utilizing modern day science to be as effective and consistent as possible with that. Cannabis started in the Central Asian, or the first original cannabis plants grew in Central Asia, and over the last several thousand years, they made their way around the world following traditional trade routes. Cannabis and hemp, which I'll kind of speak to the differentiation a little bit, is one of the most versatile plants on the planet. There's over 50,000 things that you could do with the fiber, seed, and oil of the hemp plant, and the buds of the cannabis plant also seem to have very significant medicinal benefit. In the United States, cannabis up until the early 1900s was readily available at any pharmacy and recommended for a number of issues and ailments. And it wasn't until 1944 that it was written out of the US Pharmacopoeia, even though people were still encouraged around that time to grow hemp plants in victory gardens, as the fiber was used to make, the fiber from the hemp plant was used for parachutes and parachute cords through World War II. So this long list of seemingly unrelated medical issues is probably the top 10 things that we help people with when they come into our store. What we focus on and emphasize in our store is knowing why cannabis seems to be so effective for so many different things, and that is due to the endocannabinoid system, which we'll kind of touch on coming up here in a little bit. But it's also the basics of it is this plant produces essential oils that are very similar to how our body regulates itself. It produces chemicals that interact with receptors throughout our body and can help to modulate different systems. And any system of the body essentially that is overstimulated or understimulated, what cannabinoids do throughout our body is help to regulate things. So instead of, these ups and downs, we try to keep things a little bit more level. And again, our emphasis is knowing what product is going to be better for insomnia versus arthritis, and why you might want to use one product over another, or how to incorporate cannabis into your life to get the maximum benefit with the least impact and the least amount and to zero intoxicating effects when possible. There's a lot of different ways that you can take cannabis. We have several hundred products just in our store alone, and we have compared to some other places, we have a very specifically focused menu. So everything that we carry in our store, we have in our store for a very specific reason, and there's a very specific purpose why we would recommend a specific product versus another specific product. There's a lot of different ways that you can use cannabis, edible products, smokable products, topical products. They all have their benefit. They all have their reasons why they might not be ideal for you. But there are certainly a combination of things that whatever you're looking for or looking to use cannabis for, we can kind of get you set up with a routine and a regimen that's going to be catered to your personal preferences and to what specifically what you're dealing with. We tend to be more symptom-based and symptom-focused, and what an individual is experiencing is what we want to help with. So cannabinoids are really why any of this is, why cannabis in general is such a a loved thing and such a beneficial thing, and why a lot of people may have had an amazing experience with it, and why some people may have had a negative experience with it. The cannabinoids in the cannabis plants, the plant doesn't produce them for us. It acts as the plant's immune system. A lot of these are antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal. A lot of them are natural insecticides. So the plant is really adapting to its local environment, to what it is experiencing, whether that's heat, cold, bugs, mold, whatever environment that plant is, it's going to produce these very different specific compounds that are going to help to protect it. This is what we now classify as strains or chemovars. All the different plants and strains that you would see in a cannabis store or online. All these different names like Blue Dream or Gorilla Glue or Girl Scout cookies that you might have heard of. These plants originated in different parts of the world, and they grew and adapted to their specific climate. When they came to the New World, when they came to America, these unique and specific plants were bred together, were grown in different environments where they adapted to their new surroundings, and that's why you see the variety that we have today, and on the store in the stores and on the shelves. What's really exciting for me as someone that's focused on the medicinal aspects of the cannabis plant is these different plants from around the world exhibit different chemicals, like THC, like CBD, several others that we're beginning to see, like CBG, Delta 8 THC, and THCV, or tetrahydrocannabivarin. As these things become more prominent, we're going to get access to better, more diverse cannabis products that are going to be more specifically beneficial for different ailments. So the more breeding there is, the more we learn, the more research and study there is, the better we're going to get in making our recommendations, the more specific and precise the products are going to get, and the more relief we're going to be able to provide for people. Terpenes are essential oils that are found in all plants. They are not at all unique or only found in cannabis. Any fruit, herb, spice that you're smelling that either you love or you hate, that is all from the terpenes. These are things that have been used again for centuries for their medicinal benefits. Like citrus has been used for its antiseptic benefits and cleaning benefits for thousands of years. Lavender has been used for its calming and relaxing benefits, also for its pain relieving benefits in salves and ointments. And all these unique smells are essential oils which interact throughout our body and can enhance the effects and the benefits of those cannabinoids. So the cannabinoids and the terpenes really work together to become more beneficial than singular isolated CBD on its own, THC on its own, or essential oils on its own. It's really, it's referred to as the entourage effect, and it's really the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's why things like the synthetic cannabinoids, like Marinol, which is an FDA-approved cannabinoid, synthetic THC, that's why that exists, but very few people use it. When, if it was just THC that was the important thing, then there's a pharmaceutical, again, called Marinol. It was created in the 80s or the 90s for cancer and AIDS patients who were having wasting disorders, and they thought, cannabis, when people use cannabis, they got the munchies. So like pharmaceutical companies tend to do, they isolated and made a synthetic version of THC. And what they found is that pure isolated synthetic THC caused a very uncomfortable, overly intoxicating effect that you didn't get when you used cannabis that had other cannabinoids and all these terpenes. So the more what we really focus on, the more that we learn, the more we find out that it's not just CBD, it's not just THC, but it's a combination of all these different things that are in the plants that are much more effective together than they are individual. So these are the 5 most common terpenes found throughout cannabis. Citrus, pine, skunky, earthy, spicy, again, anything that you would find in a grocery store, we now have a cannabis that'll have a very similar smell and profile. To me, I can look at a package of cannabis. I can see one of these 5 things on there, and it's going to give me, or a combination of several of them, and it's going to give me a very clear understanding of what the effects from that product are going to be. If it's a high THC plants that you're smoking and it's high in limonene, I can very confidently say that it's going to have intoxicating effects, and it's going to be more of a bright mood enhancing effect. And that's going to be very consistent for a lot of people. Now, if you're someone and you know that THC is overstimulating for you, if you know that too much THC makes you uncomfortable, I can look at that profile and say that it might not be the best thing for you. But having that information and on the product allows us to, again, find what is going to be most specifically effective and beneficial for an individual. So this is a readout of what's called the endocannabinoid system. It's kind of an interesting story how we discovered how the endocannabinoid system was discovered, in that it was essentially discovered almost by accident. A team of doctors in Israel were tasked with figuring out why people got high from THC or from cannabis. And after isolating THC, they started finding receptors throughout the body that this was interacting with. Initially, finding it to be very predominant in the brain and the gut. And the THC was is stimulatory of those receptors in the brain and the gut, called CB1 receptors, which is why when you get too much THC, you get the intoxicating effects, you get the appetite stimulation. So from that, they started researching other cannabinoids like CBD, and found that that was interacting a little bit more specifically throughout the peripheral nervous system, throughout our immune system. And they weren't seeing that same stimulation in the brain, which is why the CBD doesn't cause the intoxicating effects. But it seems to have more of a powerful anti-inflammatory, immunomodulatory response, as that's the system of the body it's more directly interacting with. CB1 and CB2 receptors are the primary receptors that we understand that cannabis is interacting with, but there are many others, TRPV1, serotonin receptors throughout the body. Again, the endocannabinoid system is really what is responsible for regulating and maintaining homeostasis, so maintaining balance. So you can see on this chart all these different areas of the body where it's interacting. To me, I can see that like muscles have a CB1 receptor. That would be the receptor that THC stimulates. For something, an issue where there's a lot of muscle tightness and muscle rigidity, it's going to be THC that is more specifically beneficial at helping to relax the muscles and release that muscle tension and tightness, versus the CBD, which is not going to interact with those same receptors. You might get great anti-inflammatory benefits from that, but without even small amounts of THC, it might not be as effective. So specifically utilizing cannabis for Parkinson's, I've met with and spoken to many different Parkinson's support groups over the last several years. So I've been doing research into cannabis for Parkinson's for the last 3 years now. And my understanding, without being a doctor, is that there's neurons are dying off, and the brain is not producing proper levels of dopamine. There's miscommunication in the brain. And that leads to a lot of the other things experienced with Parkinson's. Cannabis can regulate neurotransmitters. It can regulate things like dopamine, serotonin, GABA, acetylcholine. Again, THC, CBD, they're really good about finding things that are overstimulated or understimulated. So if there's an understimulation of dopamine, it's actually pretty interesting how it works. Our brain is sending signals one way. So the brain is sending the dopamine from presynaptic to postsynaptic neurons in a healthy brain. When someone has Parkinson's, the brain might be trying to send the dopamine from presynaptic to postsynaptic neuron, but the postsynaptic neuron or the presynaptic neuron might have died off potentially from glutamate toxicity or something else. So there's poor communication throughout the brain. What THC does is it travels backwards in a retrograde fashion from the postsynaptic neuron to the presynaptic neuron. So what that can do is it can stimulate dopamine production and increase the flow of dopamine. If it finds that there is neuronal die-off, if that neuron, the postsynaptic neuron, isn't functioning properly, then the THC can potentially go up other pathways and other channels to stimulate dopamine production through what's called neural pruning, and basically making a more efficient pathways and channels. So there seems to be several different ways that cannabis specifically can benefit a Parkinson's patient. Again, a lot of people find that it helps with tremors, it helps with muscle tightness and rigidity. The flip side to this is cannabis has something called biphasic effects. Depending on the dosage, it can have completely opposite effects of a smaller dosage. So a large amount and a small amount can actually have the opposite effect of each other. So unlike certain things where if a small amount is good, then more is better, there's a threshold that is different for everybody, that once you have crossed that threshold, once you've taken too much, instead of something, again, we'll kind of say that we'll focus with the THC, instead of THC helping with muscle rigidity, with spasticity, with regulating of dopamine production, too much THC can be overly stimulating and could potentially cause further dizziness, or primarily it would be something like a dizziness or something, but something that would make movement and walking potentially even more difficult, which is, again, the opposite of what we're going for. Because of this, we always recommend start low, go slow. I'll often recommend a dose that I know isn't going to be enough, because there's both immediate and cumulative benefit to cannabis products. The first time you use it, the first time it goes into your system, it can provide relief, but as it builds up in the system and as you use it consistently and continually, instead of seeing these spikes where you might have good days or bad days, or you're good in the morning and not as good throughout the day, instead of seeing these spikes, as it builds up in the system, the endocannabinoid system is responsible for maintaining homeostasis. So our goal is to find the ideal dosage and the ideal regimen for an individual as to help them throughout the day with what they're specifically experiencing. Edible products can be a really great way to provide long-lasting relief for someone dealing with a chronic issue. An edible can last typically 6 to 8 hours. So there's a lot of people who can use it first thing in the morning. It can provide a lot of relief throughout the day. Some people will do it after dinner or just right before bed, and it can help them sleep throughout the night. And by the time they wake up in the morning, your body has processed it, and there's none of that. You're getting the benefit from it, but you don't necessarily still feel it. So edibles can be a really great way for staying ahead of certain issues. Their major drawback is the delay in onset of effects. It can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours to begin to feel the effects from a cannabis edible. And if you are in need of relief, that can be a long time to wait. So again, I recommend with the edible products um, to try to stay ahead of issues. I'm in fact a fan of what they refer to as a microdose. So using a small amount a little bit more frequently versus using a large amount when an issue is potentially when there is an issue. So again, trying to stay ahead of certain issues with small amounts a bit more frequently versus waiting till you're having a bad day or a flare up or whatever it might be, and then kind of chasing it with a larger amount. I know for a lot of people, it's a non-starter. They don't want to smoke. You certainly don't have to smoke. The major benefit of inhalation of a cannabis product is the immediacy of the onset of effects. Where the edible has to be digested and go through your stomach and into your liver before you feel the effects, which can have a delay in onset. The smokable products are inhaled into the lungs where they're dispersed through the bloodstream within about 60 seconds. So within 1 to 5 minutes, you're beginning to feel that relief. The vaporizer products, are a bit more concentrated. They don't have that stereotypical cannabis smell. So a lot of people, this is something that they can keep on them in their car, in their desk at work, at home. And if they need that immediate relief, a quick inhalation from a vaporizer can provide that immediate relief much faster than an ingested edible product might. In the long-term studies that have been done with cannabis users, they don't see the same levels of carcinogens and onset of lung cancers as they do with someone smoking tobacco and nicotine. There's not the same carcinogens versus smoking tobacco or a cigarette. Inhalation of anything can be an irritant, can exacerbate asthma or bronchial issues, COPD. So there certainly are people where smoking's not ideal. But for a lot of people, again, that immediate onset of effects can be really beneficial. What we really focus on here is knowing how and why and when to use a certain product versus another product. Currently, CBD and THC are the two most predominant cannabinoids that we are taking advantage of. Again, they're not the only ones, and we do have a lot of products with what we would call the minor cannabinoids, CBG, THCA, Delta-8 THC. And again, what we really focus on is knowing how and when and why. So for a lot of what Parkinson's patients are experiencing, it is the THC that's going to be more beneficial and effective. What we focus on is how do you get the benefits from THC without the intoxication, without the impairment, the maximum benefit with the most minimal impact. And one of the amazing things about this plant, about cannabinoids, is that they work, again, really well together. So what we have found is as long as there's at least 5 times more CBD than there is THC, then the CBD will act as a buffer to mitigate those intoxicating effects. So it still allows the THC to be effective, to regulate neurotransmitters, to help ease muscle tension, to help ease muscle tightness and rigidity. And then the CBD is going to have great anti-inflammatory benefits, but primarily is going to act as a buffer to those intoxicating effects. Often people will start with a very high CBD, low THC product in the morning and during the day, and that's enough to have benefit with very minimal impact. And then when they're home in the evenings right before bed, they might utilize a product that has higher levels of THC to get more of the benefit of the THC, and then you know, especially once you're used to it and we find the right products for you, typically it's just going to be kind of more calming, relaxing, sedating. So a lot of people like that more in the evenings, as it helps a lot of people sleep better, helps with pain, or helps potentially if something like a tremor is keeping you awake at night. Everybody's very different, so I can't sit here and say this is the product that all people with Parkinson should be using. The severity of what people are experiencing is different. Everyone's bodies are very different, and their base levels of different hormones and different things is very different. So one of the things, again, that we do here at the Novel Tree is have a conversation and kind of figure out where you're at. And you know, based on our experience, we know that if you have used cannabis in the past, that we can maybe start in one place. And if you haven't, then that's going to have us start in a completely different place. So we really tailor and cater our recommendations to the individual. So what we sell here at the Novel Tree Medical is everything is cannabis derived. The legal definition of cannabis is that it's from the marijuana plant and it has more than 0.3% THC. Hemp products are legal throughout the nation. You can find them online in grocery stores. I was at PetSmart today and they had a whole wall of hemp CBD products. Hemp, by definition, is from the cannabis plant and it has less than 0.3% THC. So really right now it's the THC that is the differentiator, and that is very strictly regulated. Hemp is an amazing agricultural product. Again, there's over 50,000 things that you can do with hemp, from building materials, plastics, ropes, fiber, clothing. We're really in the midst of a hemp renaissance in this country. There's going to be a lot of things that were manufactured overseas that in the next few years will be converted to sustainable US grown hemp. A lot of opportunity there. The one thing that the hemp plant isn't as good at is producing cannabinoids, and that's through very specific breeding where it was bred for its fiber, for its stalk, for its seed, for its oil. Where cannabis was more very specifically bred for the cannabinoids, for the terpenes, and as much more of a medicinally focused plant. So everything that we sell here at the Novel Tree is cannabis. Will have at least very small amounts of THC. Again, our intention is not to cause the intoxicating effects, but to get something that's going to be beneficial and effective. Everything in our store, we have created probably one of the strictest purchasing standards in the United States. Everything we sell is completely pesticide free or using organic inputs, or we won't sell it. That is, our standards are far beyond what Washington requires. And for hemp, there currently are no standards. Anybody is able to go online, purchase a hemp product. Anyone's able to purchase hemp in bulk, and it's fairly easy to do, and they can make their own hemp CBD products. Everything in our store, there's a barcode on it, and we can track that barcode back to the individual plants that our products were grown from. Hemp can be grown throughout the world, processed throughout the world, turned into a product anywhere, and delivered to your front door without anybody testing it for potency, without any testing really at all. So there's no governing board or standard for pesticides, molds, heavy metals, mycotoxins, where in Washington and very much specifically in our store, we've created standards for all of that to guarantee that anything that we have here, anything that we're going to sell you, is of the highest possible standards and quality available in North America today. We also find that the hemp products, which is typically made with just pure isolated CBD is not as effective as the full plant products that we have here that are going to have more than just CBD, more than just THC. They'll have combinations and terpenes, and again, they'll benefit from that entourage effect of everything in the plant working together to be more effective than the singular isolated compounds. You can purchase hemp products online. You can get it delivered to your door. It is very convenient. You might have seen it at the gas station, or again this morning I saw a shelf at PetSmart. We always just recommend to be cautious with sourcing. I understand that a lot of people watching this might have very strong feelings about THC. You might have seen somebody use it and misuse it. You may have had an experience with it that you might have taken too much and had a negative experience with it, or based on the propaganda from the government for the last 80 years, you might have heard of reefer madness. With being careful with sourcing and where your products are coming from should be the standard for everything. We find that these hemp-derived CBD products without these other components just aren't as effective as the products that we carry here. Pure isolated hemp CBD might be better than not using anything, but is typically not going to be as effective as what we have here in the store. Again, at the Novel Tree Medical, we are the only dedicated medical cannabis facility in Washington. We work very hard to have the highest quality level of products and the newest, most up-to-date, latest, greatest, scientifically backed, driven, and focused products that are available on the market. There are a lot of things that we carry here that don't exist really anywhere else in the country yet at this point, and we've worked very hard to establish relationships with the growers of the cannabis plants that we work with, that whenever there is something new or something interesting or something unique, that we're the first place to get it, or they will launch products at our store because they know that we have the information and the education to back up any of these new products. We're also the only store where every employee is certified through the Washington State Department of Health. So any individual that you interact with has the same certifications as I do, the same level of training as I do, and is going to be able to answer questions for you. I know what you must be thinking, that the service we must provide must be astronomically expensive, but it's not. We want to provide the highest quality level of education and information in the country, and we provide that service for absolutely free. There's no surcharges on any of our products. There's no fees to talk to us, to email us. We absolutely encourage it. The more conversations we have, the more feedback we get, the better we're going to be at helping the next person. In the last 4 years, I've had close to 30,000 individual transactions with people. That's 30,000 conversations that I've had with people in terms of the effects that people will get from a certain product if they have Parkinson's versus if they don't. Again, which products might be effective and beneficial versus the feedback of what products aren't. So when you come to our store, you're really getting the advantage of the years of experience that we now have, because our menu is really representative of only the products that we've gotten positive feedback of over the last 3 years. Products that we are able to get as consistently as possible for a plant with a finite harvest. We always try to have the same or comparable products, so that if we find something that is helpful for you, we always want to try to have it and to be able to provide that for you. again, please feel free to reach out, to call us, to email us, to come in. We really love the opportunity to help people and to represent cannabis in its best light, its most medicinal light, and I'm really proud to be able to focus on and help people use this plant medicinally and to really achieve the results that they're hoping for. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for bearing with me. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Again, please feel free to reach out at any of these sources, call us, email us, come into the shop. Even if you just want to ask us questions, we will spend as much time as we need to making sure that you feel comfortable. My name is Matt Kowarski. I am a Department of Health certified medical cannabis consultant. Thank you so much. Have a great day.